take your mind back to the 1800s America as we discover the lengths the dominant force of the southern plains went to in the protection of their land. The nomadic horseback Comanche had sustained on hunting and trading alongside fellow tribes sustained for centuries. Yet the arrival of settlers on their territory meant all-out war. A war where capture by the Comanches could leave you buried, scalped, dismembered, and alive for the entire ordeal. Welcome to History on Fleek. Today we explore the brutal landscape of war and reprisal between the native Comanche and the American settlers. Hold on to your hats as we witness natives protecting their territory and the remorseless punishment of captured men and women, and unflinching bloodshed to follow. It is consistently commented that among the Sioux and Apache tribes, the Comanches were one of the most feared Native American tribes. Typically described by the colonial settlers as the most aggressive and warlike, the Comanches were uncompromising and fearsome in the protection of their land. People became bounties, body parts became trophies, and sadism was a test of honor. Should a Comanche war party return from a raid bearing the fruits of success with booty, captives, and without losses of their own, feverish celebration would follow. The entire band would be greeted with the whooping cheers of women, the impassioned thumping of drums, and they would recite their campaign to the camp. Reputation and pride were on the line. The greatest victors of the raid were honored, and those with the most coups to claim had reputations built or established. Those who had the least to claim, or none at all, could expect their reputations destroyed. A successful war party would dance long into the night, dancing till they dropped as their trophies and scalps would be hung on poles for all to see. However, should a Comanche war party return to camp with nothing to show, or even worse, only disaster to report without a trophy to their name, the atmosphere was funereal. What would be a hysteria of victory, pride, and celebration turned into an often days-long procession of lamenting and, when appropriate, mourning. A tribe member killed in a raid would be mourned for months by their family members. It's written that the despair of loss could drive women to sever their own fingers or breasts. The councils and their healers, the Pahakat, would seek medicine for retribution. Tragically, this meant that retaliation and more war parties were the only response to a failed campaign. During the 18th century, the Comanche took on a considerable expansion. They fought in a series of conflicts against Spanish and later Mexican armies. Much of this conflict was predominantly focused on stealing livestock, with the majority of attacks falling on the north frontier of Spanish New Mexico. In 1716, following numerous livestock raids, the governor of New Mexico would launch a series of attacks against the Comanche camp on the outskirts of the San Antonio Mountain. This would escalate the animus and conflict between the tribe and New Mexico. Just 3 years later, in 1719, the Comanche would conduct a major raid, leaving several dead in Taos. Conflict between New Mexican settlers and the Comanche would continue over the next 67 years, till a major lasting peace agreement in 1786. Yet the Comanche, despite hundreds of lost tribe members over the decades, made major gains. First, in the 1730s, they became the first Native Americans to shift to an equestrian economy. Secondly, the Mexican government backed off from any open conflict with the Comanche, for the time being. So what exactly did a Comanche war party get up to? Well, where to begin? A recurring account of Comanche punishment was deceiving their captives into what they thought would be forced labor. The reality would turn out to be much more grisly. Returning from the trail, Comanches would commonly take a prisoner and demand that they begin digging a hole out in the plains. The prisoner would be informed that the hole was needed for a Comanche religious ceremony. Given just a knife to assist them in the task, the prisoner would have to dig a 5-foot pit with essentially just their bare hands. This exhausting task no doubt took hours, and once finally completed, the prisoner was in for a nasty surprise. When the Comanche saw a hole of suitable depth, the prisoner was then forcibly bound with rope and thrown into it. Following this, the hole would be filled with dirt till the prisoner was buried in the ground up to their head. Comanche would then scalp the prisoner, removing their nose, ears, eyelids, and lips. As the Comanche rode away, the prisoner would be left to the sun and the insects to deliver their demise. It's been written by American historians back at camp the Comanche who achieved this punishment on their captive would gain a form of celebrity, as if they performed some remarkable prank. Curiously, the Comanche had different methods of punishment depending on who was taken captive. The poor souls in question had every reason in the world to be dizzy with horror, the male prisoners as much as the females. Some American historians would tell you that it was common practice for male prisoners to be brought back from a war campaign for the pleasure of the camp's women. Though it should be stated, there are far more accounts of male prisoners being killed on the way back and being subjected to physical punishment than anything else. Among Native American tribes, bravery was the highest possible virtue. This meant brutal physical punishment was the highest form of test. It's been written there was a degree of fascination, if not satisfaction, from natives dishing out the extreme punishment. It was witness to the ultimate test of valor in their captives. What were these stomach-churning punishments exactly? Some accounts speak of burying captives in the ground up to their necks before removing their eyelids, leaving them blinded and starved out in the sun. Other accounts speak of male prisoners being spread-eagled over a red ant bed. Extreme punishment by fire was common for the Comanche, usually with the wholesale intent of destroying nerves. The nerves in question would be those found in extremities, hands, feet, and elsewhere. Yet valor, the capacity to display bravery in the face of the most extreme duress, was all important to the natives doling out these punishments. The male prisoners who died with bravery certainly achieved honor in the eyes of their captors. Curiously, if a victim to these punishments remained defiant till their end, they'd frankly beaten their captors. He had brought bad magic upon the Comanches punishing him. One account alleges that one male prisoner managed to laugh in the face of Comanche captors when they threatened his extremities with a punishment of fire. It's alleged the war chief demanded the prisoner be released unharmed. He was seen as having magic too strong for the Comanches to test. In 1845, the United States would annex Texas, negotiating a treaty with the Comanche among other tribes. Things started well. Trading posts, peace, and friendship were promised. The one most important detail of a boundary line between Texas and Comanche, however, was kinda spoken, but not defined. Over the next 20 years, American Civil War would take the bulk of Congress's attention. Smallpox and cholera would ravage the Comanche in several waves. All the while, the tribe kept their promises of safe passage along the Santa Fe Trail. Meanwhile, American settlers were moving further and further into what was Comanche. Come the 1860s, U.S. Army forts were consecutively built as the frontier only advanced. One of the gravest fears of settlers in the newfound land was the capture of their own. As much as the men were chilled to the bone with tales of the fearsome natives, the women had every right to fear their capture themselves. Historians point to sexual violence against captured women beginning before the Comanche war party would even reach their encampment. It's believed this started once the Comanche believed they'd traveled far enough away from the location of their raid for it to be secure. Then they could light fires and make camp for themselves. Comanche held no taboo against tormenting and punishing women. It was rare, however, for it to go beyond sexual violence. There is no document of sexual sadism among the Comanche against their female captives. Physical punishment given to female captives was more debilitating than devastating. They would commonly have their heel tendons cut and be left in the wilderness. Murder was an outcome suffered by female captives. In many instances, they would be impaled on stakes. Should a captured woman be brought back to camp by the Comanche warriors, she would have other concerns than the warriors who brought her. The Comanche women were reportedly capable of stark territorial tendencies, or as you and I would know it, jealousy. Abuse and physical punishment from Comanche women was likely for any captured woman brought back to the camp. The consistent arrival of new settlers from the east and the diseases brought placed constant pressure on the Comanche and their ability to live their lives. The 1867 Treaty of Medicine Lodge was symbolic of the turning tide for the Comanches. They could hunt all the buffalo they pleased no matter how much the U.S. government did its utmost to stop it. But they were losing land by the year, and from every single treaty that came along, promised churches, schools, and annuities. The treaty cost the Comanche 60,000 square miles of land. In return, the Comanche and several other native tribes were offered a reservation of less than 5,000 square miles. Following the climactic Battle of Palo Duro Canyon in 1874, the U.S. Army would claim a symbolic and significant victory over Comanches and other tribes living at the large encampment on the canyon. Just a year later, the last Comanches under the leadership of Quanah Parker would surrender and move to the Fort Still Reservation. Within a decade, buffalo were facing extinction, meaning that the Comanche way of life was equally facing demise. It's alleged that Native American warriors captured by the Comanche could somehow still face worse outcomes. Many accounts detail that a captured warrior who was left to be punished by the encampment women was given the most drawn-out and vicious of punishment. Comanche camp women are recognized as the more patient and remorseless tormentors. In punishment that would last hours into days, As long as the warrior survived, fingers would be removed, tongues would be stretched, foot soles would be burned, and sadistic attention would be paid to the most sensitive of extremities. This is History on Fleek, and we'll see you next time.